Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's District Administration Web Seminar, which is entitled Strategic and Financial Planning, Adapting from COVID-19 for EdTech Sustainability, which is brought to you by the generous support of our sponsor, Cisco. Before we get started, I would like to share just a few housekeeping items with all of you. For technical support, please use the chat panel, which you can find on the right side of your screen. Then select my name, which is Stephen Blackburn, and then type your message to me if you're having any technical issues, and I should get back to you. If you don't have computer speakers or if you prefer to listen privately, please dial the phone number and access code that I'll be posting in the chat window in a few minutes. Today for this web seminar, we'll also be welcoming any questions you may have today with a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. To submit a question, please do so by accessing the Q&A panel, which you can find at the right side of your screen here, and then send all of your questions to all panelists, which is the default option. If you don't see the chat or the Q&A panels, please look to the right side of your screen again in the lower right-hand corner, and then click on the expand triangle, which is directly in front of the panel name, to make sure you have access to it. Also, one last thing I'd like to note before we begin. If you would like to access the web seminar at a later time, you'd be pleased to know that everyone who registered and who is attending today will receive an email with a link to the slide and an archive recording. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of today's event, Lenny Shad, who is the CIO and Innovation Officer here at District Administration. Take it away, Lenny. It's all you.
All right, Stephen, thank you very much. And good afternoon to everybody. I'm really excited about this conversation that we're going to have, and excited and pleased that we have the team from Henry County to share what I believe is a really good story. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. As I said, we have the team from Henry County Schools, and I'd like them to do a brief introduction. So why don't we start off with Dr. Davis, the Superintendent of Schools. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, Lenny, and thank you, Cisco, for hosting this for Henry County Schools to share our story and hopefully build colleagues across the country. I'm Mary Elizabeth Davis, and I have the opportunity to serve as the superintendent in Henry County Schools. We get to serve in a community of 43,000 students and 6,000 employees, and our larger community is 235,000 people, just 15 miles south of Atlanta. It is a charming community and one of the best in the business in public education. I'd also love to share that we've got 52 schools in our school community, and you can see on the screen representation of our great school community and the opportunity we have to serve. And I'm thrilled to be here with members of our team.
Thank you. And well, I'm going to go back to the slides. So Dr. Blanton, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Lenny. Yeah, I'm Brian Blanton. I'm Chief Information Officer for Henry County Schools, and so we support all things information technology, but also instructional technology in our division, and I'm partnered up with some fantastic partners on the screen to help lead in this work.
Perfect. I think the newest member of your team, Shanika Clay, are you there? Shanika, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Shanika Clay, Chief Financial Officer of Henry County Schools, recently appointed, but have been with the district for a year. And I'm just excited to be leading in this journey and excited to be here with you all today.
Perfect. Well, congratulations. I'm sure you have your hands full. So, all right, we'll move on to Melissa Morse. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Melissa?
Sure, thanks. Good afternoon. I am Melissa Morse, and I'm the Chief of Learning and Performance. So in a lot of your districts, that's probably the combination of the Chief Academic Officer and Chief Accountability Officer. So it's exciting to be here with my operational colleagues and share our interdependency.
Perfect. Thank you. And wrapping up our esteemed panel, we have John Harrington. John, bring us home.
Hey, Lenny. Wow, I don't even know what to say after sort of coming after that illustrious group. I'm with Funds for Learning. We are a consulting firm that works with schools and libraries all across the country, helping them secure E-rate funding for their internet access. And obviously, as we all know, internet and connectivity has played such a central role in the pandemic, and then as we pivot towards the future. So it's very exciting to be a part of this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, John. All right. So what I want to do is move on to what we're going to be talking about. We have 5 high-level topics we want to cover today, and we have some questions around each. So without spending a lot of time going through the agenda itself, let's jump right into the questions. So the pandemic put many districts into firefighter mode, and honestly, many districts are still in firefighter mode. So Dr. Davis, can you give us an update on where Henry County is and how you reacted to the pandemic?
Yeah, Lenny, what a poignant question for anyone in our industry these days. We've really started to distinguish multiple phases of this experience of responding to the pandemic. We've really started with what we now call our crisis response season, which for us was really like March 16th, that first day of remote learning. We really turned from closing schools on March 13th and stood up remote learning on March 16th. So really over 72 hours, got kids learning from their home spaces and had teachers teaching from kitchen tables and living rooms and backyards. And that crisis response really went from March 16th till the end of June, where we were reacting, we were responding, and we were constantly recreating everything that ever was in order to wrap up the school year. But we really see that the tenor changed as we moved from June 30th into that month of July. And we've now kind of claimed that phase, July 1st, really for us through November 1st, as crisis leadership. We needed to now lead a community into the next right responsible steps and determine the role that the school system played in the entire health, stability, and future of the community. And we have reopened our school campuses. We have offered families a choice of learning remotely or learning on campus. And 41% of our students have returned to on-campus learning. But we completed that whole reopening process by November 1st. And we have now kind of coined this season that we are in crisis management and now leading for the future. Because this now has to become a part of our management repertoire and a little bit more a part of just our daily operations in order to make school possible. And reopening is a different phase than sustaining being open. And so this is now our crisis management phase. And what you see on the screen is what we refer to as our compass. This is a reflection of our Board of Education in Henry County Schools, who function with a unified governance model that they have crafted and they have remained true to. And what we have never lost sight of over each of these 3 seasons that I just described is that student learning is our core business. And of course, caring about the health and well-being of our children, our employees, and our families is now a part of making learning happen even more than it ever has been. But it is still our core responsibility and our public duty to be accessible to the youth in our community and provide access to a high-quality learning experience and guarantee a quality education. And we've never lost sight of that core purpose, even while we've managed through these 3 seasons. And that's really a reflection of the Board of Education and the work they've done to set that tone, tenor, and community expectations.
Wow, that is really impressive. I love this document because, alignment and a cohesive work environment starts at the top. And when it starts at the top and is enforced at the top, it's very easy for people in your organization to follow through. So thank you for that great explanation. So it seems to me, as I look at this and listen to you, there's a cultural tenet of interdependence. And I think that's a strong theme that runs through the discussions that we've had and on that slide. Melissa, can you talk to us about how this philosophy of interdependence helped you all navigate through those 3 cycles that Dr. Davis talked about?
I would love to. And that slide that Dr. Davis was just speaking to is really important because it's through that foundational expectation that we are all united in the way we're going to govern our district with the board and as an executive team is really important. And so we talk a lot on our team about the idea of being a team of teams. And that while we lead large divisions, the expectation of our board and our superintendent is that we are team one. And that together as chiefs in the organization, it's our responsibility to ensure that interdependency and to avoid any opportunity for silos. And that was our expectation before a pandemic hit. But to me, what's really sort of well-timed, if we had to well-time a pandemic, was that we had already done a lot of foundational work around that and sort of already been working in the expectation that what impacts teaching and learning, our core business, which I'm lucky enough to very clearly lead, is also the core business of every other member of the executive team and our teams as we cascade through the organization. So I think, when I look at this idea of what's the philosophy of interdependence, in Henry County, it is the way we do business. There is no availability to go back into your silo because we are constantly being asked, who else needs to know this? Who do we need to message this to? Who haven't you asked? So that at any given turn, we knew that that team was going to come together to be successful, to lead teaching and learning before a pandemic and then now during the pandemic, but also that future casting. So I think it's really critical that it is just the way we do business and we expect it from each other.
And Lenny, could I actually add to that thinking? Because I've heard Missy say this before. There's a difference between collaboration and interdependency. It is a responsibility to realize your work and the impact of your work is actually dependent upon the integration and interdependency with other contributors to the work. And so I feel like this is deeper than collaborating. This is deeper than being in the same room at the same time. This is even deeper than agreed upon shared decision making. This is really a constant outlook on the role and reason one works and serves students every single day. And in these seasons, for all of us in public education, it is every single minute around the clock of every day.
Go ahead, Dr. Blanton.
Yeah, if I could hop in here, I'll just add that I think part of our huge success in this moment and in general is not just the fact that we work so interdependently with one another as partners in the work and leading together in the work, but I think we have done a highly effective job of cascading that down the organization so that those on my executive team and Missy's executive team see themselves as part of a larger team working together. And so I really think the way that has penetrated down into our organization, we've modeled that at the executive cabinet level, but it's really penetrated our organization in a powerful way.
Perfect. Thank you. I want you to hold that thought because we have a question coming up that I want to feed off of that a little bit. So we're going to continue on with you, Dr. Blanton, as you know, technology has moved pre-COVID from being viewed in a lot of districts as a solution to the classroom. Now what we've seen is technology is part of that classroom experience, part of that instructional process, right? What have you done to help your team think differently about their role and really embrace the fact that now they're part of daily instruction? If it doesn't work, kids don't learn.
Yeah, I think we had to look at what is support and what does support mean. Prior to the pandemic, a big part of our work was break fix, getting those devices out in the field, which we have about 50,000 of those out there, and keep those things in repair in a way that is responsive to the end user and to ensure that students are always learning. But, you know, when we found ourselves in fully remote learning back in the spring, we recognized we had to look at what does technical support look like, moving from really that break fix to professional development and best practices. And so we brought both professional development and teacher support together and kind of married those things so that both IT and specifically our instructional technology team, working with our more technical teams, so that they partnered with Melissa's Missy in our world, so I'll be calling her Missy. But that Missy, her team, our teams came together to provide that technical support and instructional support. And did that together. And so really we were looking at both instructional, pedagogical best practices along with those technical best practices. And when we were struggling out there in the student learning community, it was, things like kids getting pushed out of online learning sessions. That was highly technical, but around a teacher's practice. And when they had teachers doing certain activities all at the same time, how they were streaming, those were some of the things that caused the technical issues. Instead of just addressing that from a technical standpoint, because probably the best technical fix may interfere with the instruction, the quality of the instructional experience that we value. So we made sure that we did that together, thought about our pedagogy, thought about our best instructional practices, along with what are those practices that are going to create technical success out in the field. Our teams really kind of created what we called office hours. And so our instructional coordinators and our instructional technology professionals came together, created the same structure. So a teacher really didn't know that they were moving necessarily from one to the, it all felt the same for them. They got the kind of support they needed from the professional support that they needed. So I think, again, that partnership helped us to create the kind of IT support that was necessary, but then in partnership with our partners in instruction.
Perfect, thank you, Dr. Elizabeth. I have a question for you. Are you viewing this as a point in time scenario, or do you view this remote learning, hybrid learning, as is going to be a fabric of how you want to provide instruction to your kids moving forward?
That remote learning has found its place in public education for the long haul. The current approach certainly has opportunity to evolve because it'll be less because of being responsive and more because of being strategic and pursuing options for kids. But we are really seeing a million ways where remote learning will be a part of the way kids learn, especially for students who have actually found more success in this environment than they may have in what we typically delivered as a public entity. And so I think this has been a season that we will actually become better because of.
Perfect, thank you. And I couldn't agree more with you. So as I'm listening to you talk about your philosophy, how your teams work together, I'm reminded of a story I heard about John F. Kennedy, and he had said, we're going to put a man on the moon, and he actually went to NASA, and he was walking down the hall of NASA, and there was a janitor, a custodian sweeping. And he walked up to that custodian, and he said, tell me what your job is. And the custodian looked up, and he said, my job is to put a man on the moon. And as I think about alignment and getting that done, how well do you think that kind of fidelity to your mission, fidelity to what you're doing is occurring at all levels in your organization, Dr. Davis?
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to pretend there isn't a level of fatigue that exists across the organization. But at its core, it has been a complete and pervasive commitment of every employee who believes kids are vitally important in this conversation, and giving access to a quality education is what we all do, what we do for. Someday this will be a different webinar, Lenny, but to talk about how do leaders lead and teachers teach in Henry County, it's because of the redesign of our facilities and maintenance operations. What facilities and maintenance do every summer is vitally important to kicking off strong school years. But what they had to do this summer and into the early fall, all physical adaptation, all of the mitigating strategies were deployed by our facilities and maintenance team. That is professionals who came to work knowing that what they were doing was not just vitally important to giving families choice, giving kids who needed access to the campus back on campus, but also giving a community a reason to be hopeful. So we will restore ways that we come together as communities, because that's part of what we lost during our original first phases and seasons of this pandemic.
That's awesome. So, Shanika, being the newest member to the team, what has not caught you by surprise, but what have been some of the things that, as you're new to the team and you listen to the existing team talk, what have been some of your aha moments coming in and working in an organization like this?
I just want to harken back to the interdependence conversation. So prior to coming to the table, I was able to observe, even, in my prior role, just how important the message is of not being in silos, getting out of your lane, getting to someone else's lane. How can we elevate the thinking? When the pandemic first started, we had to redesign all of our year-end processes. We had to rethink graduation. We had to think about how do we deliver money back to students that we've collected, things we've never had to do before. And it was only through, I actually was in a meeting once where someone was like, had we not already been on a journey where we just knew to work together, we don't know what we would have done in this pandemic. So it's really a credit to the leadership of this team, and it's just going to be a continuation of that interdependence and working together. And like I said, I'm excited to be here because it's a really great team.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Melissa, as a leader, what are some of the things that you do to ensure that these values are pushed down into your organizations at the lowest level to ensure that alignment? Because I think that's the challenge. It's very easy for a cabinet to have alignment, or maybe even that second layer of management. But it sounds like the way you guys operate, you have this pervasive through all levels of the organization. So I'm curious, as a leader, what are some of the tricks you can share for us?
Well, one thing I would say is I'm not always sure it is that easy for cabinets and executive cabinets to be on the same page. So I don't want to gloss over that actually takes deliberate effort too, because not everybody gets that right, and I feel like we are getting that right. But I think it all has to do with how I charge my team and how I invest in my team. A lot of what we've talked about in that team of teams concepts is that at the executive level, your responsibility is investing in the people less than it is the work. And so by investing in the people and ensuring that at the next layer down at cabinet and then in the director level, we are having common messaging and we are asking the right questions. Lenny, I feel like that's the way that it cascades. It's about modeling, but it's also about, as a leader, am I asking my people the right questions that are going to force them to then go out and seek that cross-divisional work? It gets harder the further down you go, and as roles aren't clearly defined or as things get a little messy, sometimes you've got to be the person that comes in and cleans it up when there is something that starts to butt up against each other. But I really think by being really deliberate in how we invest in the people to ask the right questions, which is, who else have you talked to? Have you gone to finance? What did the operations people think? I think those kinds of questioning techniques all the way down to the director and coordinator, et cetera, level, and quite frankly, as we go out to schools, because I think that's the other thing that's really important is that schools, it's kind of like, well, if you don't like the answer you get from mom, you go to dad. So we also have been very deliberate in letting the rest of the district leaders see us as this interdiscipline or this interdependent team, so that we don't have holes that people can poke through when they're looking for an answer that maybe they're not getting from somebody else. So I think it all goes back to that idea of the investment in the people and asking the right questions.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Lenny, I might just add to that because it does also take coaching. And so we obviously promote a lot of cross-functional teaming. And when you walk through this pandemic, I can't imagine a district who did not construct cross-divisional teams for multiple reasons. But every time we constructed a cross-functional team, we also monitored it and for the purpose of synchronization and improvement of interdependency, not just monitored for the quality of work. So right now, one of our practices is a daily call with one of those cross-functional teams at 8 o'clock in the morning. And in that beginning, it was so clunky and it was so messy. And I remember asking the same question over and over. I don't feel like this is well synchronized. Let's pause here and determine how have we synchronized in this case, it's our COVID positive response team. And so I think there's coaching involved in this, and protecting and preserving the expectation of interdependency takes all of us. And it also takes a culture that is willing to sort of get uncomfortable in spaces that intersect or merge. And really every organization, probably beyond public education, has had to do that during this pandemic. So I believe it's either strengthened it or potentially like your slide says, made silos wider.
Yeah, I'm curious because it sounds like you have a really nice flow. You're bringing people in, you're having conversations. But, you know, one of the things that I found most beneficial is when there's feedback loops that are strong and people trust that they can provide feedback and not be viewed negatively. That's the only way a really cohesive system works. Melissa, I see you shaking your head. Can you talk to us about some of the feedback loops you guys have in place so you're hearing from boots on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I am really proud of the fact that we have in every phase that Mary Elizabeth described, whether it was crisis management or the leadership, we have sought out voices, even when uncomfortable, from parents, teachers, leaders, our community. We want to hear how it's going, what's working, what's not, what can we improve. And so, you know, sometimes it's hard to hear, especially when you're running as fast as you can and doing work you've never even planned to be able to do. I think that feedback has been critical. And I think by listening, we've been able to pivot smartly, and we've been able to avoid some of the things that other districts have unfortunately had to experience, like teacher walkouts and parents picketing the building. We haven't had that because we've been listening to those voices and using it to help determine what our next steps will be. So I'm really proud that you see that and hear that in what we're saying, because we've been real deliberate about it.
And that says that there's a lot of trust in your organization, because that only happens when you have trust. Okay, we could spend hours on this. I got to move on. I'm not adhering to my own timelines. I apologize. All right, let's talk money. So we all know budgets are tight. Budgets are going to keep decreasing. I'm curious how you guys are looking at dealing with this decreased money. Are we repurposing dollars? Are we repurposing staff? Are we going to stop doing some things? So, Dr. Davis, let's start with you, and then we'll wrap this side up talking to Shanika a little bit more.
Yeah, that's good. I'll say less, let Shanika say more. First of all, I want to reflect on a really strong decision that was made by our Board of Education in April, and we moved to an emergency spending resolution, and it halted all expenditures other than emergency and like basically ongoing management, so personnel, paychecks. And that was huge because it started, one, the culture of realizing we better start preparing ahead. It also helped us get really keen on our decision making about what is an emergency and what is a convenience. So with that having set the stage, we, in a way, had already started planning for this year's budget, and it's getting us setting the stage for next year's budget. But we're right now already seeing the opportunity to do business in a more efficient and sophisticated way that also in turn serves students and families better. It's being a better employer, and it is a cost reduction. And so I'm pleased that we're really capturing that, and we're in the throes of beginning that FY22 budget preparation schedule really as we speak. And so let me toss it over to Shanika to kind of give you a sense of the protocols and the way we're trying to really not just lean in on tradition, on how we've always built the budget, but how do we now know better to build a budget?
Perfect, thank you. All right, Shanika, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes. So as Mary Elizabeth mentioned, we are actively in the dialogue of FY22, and the executive team is having conversations about what do we keep, where do we need to innovate, do we think about staffing differently, what are we going to look at? And to the question that's on the screen, strategic abandonment is definitely, a part of that conversation and tone. So as we approach the FY22 season, we're going to look at things about continuing to require justification statements. Let's not just do things just because we've done them. Let's ensure that there's a purpose, and let's tie these items to one of our strategic priorities and our strategic plan. Let's not just, the sacred cows, let's make sure we offer them up. Our executive team is going to be, doing this analysis to understand where do we need to rethink how we approach our task. And what I want to do is invite Missy to the conversation around the strategic abandonment, because it was a work that started before I came, which started with an instructional audit that led us down a pathway. So Missy, if you could share a little bit more about that instructional audit and how it can lead to the strategic abandonment continuation.
Really, this could be a whole session in and of itself, but the idea of our Board of Education was really to take a close look at what we were doing and what our return on investment was in terms of instructional resources. And so 2 years ago, we conducted a really thorough audit of what are we using, what's working, what's not, and we began a process of acquiring what we needed in order to have strong core standards-aligned resources available at the fingertips of our teachers and students, along with what do we need to get rid of. And so we did a lot of work. I mean, again, the timing of this, I just think about it a lot, actually, is we had started that process before this pandemic hit. Had we been in the middle of trying to do that, we would have been without resources for teachers and students to be able to use at home, print and digital, if we had not already done that work. So it was fortuitous that we had begun that conversation about what do teachers and students need in their hands to be successful with teaching and learning, and then what do we need to get rid of so that we don't get distracted by shiny things and instead really focus on the stuff that's giving us a return on investment.
Yeah, you know what, that audit is such a good reminder of how when you only focus on traditional spending patterns and you don't ever evaluate the impact of those spending patterns, you end up with a lot that yet feels like nothing. And we in our audit, we discovered that we actually had the dollar value per click on some of the resources that had either continuation contracts or had been renewed. And we really found some things were highly loved by a few number of people. And even if that meant restructuring our contract with that provider of content, it allowed us to restructure for that small number of individuals instead of district-wide licenses when it really was not a district-wide solution. And so that same approach is the approach we get to take now on quite a few other things that have really revealed itself as we went through our emergency spending season.
Listening to you, every dollar has an advocate, right? Every dollar has that advocate. And when I listen to all of you talking, the thing that comes to mind is courageous leadership, right? Because you are tackling, sacred cows, and that is political and that isn't easy. But when you align it to the strategic goals that your board has agreed to, it's very hard to argue, even if it is a sacred cow. So kudos to you for having the courage to do that. We're going to continue on. So have you changed, as we think about our approach to technology, to ed tech, how have you started to think differently about your procurement? Melissa, I'll start with you in thinking through budgets and what we need to purchase. What are you doing differently now? Or maybe
oh, go ahead, Lenny. Sorry.
No, I said or maybe not. I don't know. I'm to hear what you have to say.
I think we were being proactive. And so by having a different approach to the way we were going to acquire our resources, literally the June before we started last school year, it put us in a better position to look at how we have access to resources financially over a longer period of time through a subscription model with a vendor partner, and really sort of articulating this idea of that everything we were going to do wasn't going to be about a vendor transaction, but we were going to enter into these as partnerships with publishing companies. And so by having a different mindset about that and by being creative in the way we spread that cost out over time, it positioned us to be able to have and acquire resources faster, sooner, and both print and digital in a way that other districts around the country just hadn't pushed publishing companies to take advantage of. And then also really critical to all of that was being very upfront with our partners that we wanted this to be a fully integratable into our own system, that we were not interested in operating in someone else's system for delivering this content for students, but instead that we wanted the ability to customize and make our own the way our students and teachers access that content. So I'm going to let Brian kind of jump in here, but it really is from this that we've had the inception of what we call Henry Connects, which is our one-stop shop right now for teachers, but ultimately for students and families to access high-quality standards-aligned resources. Brian, do you want to add something to that?
To say that, as we moved into fully remote and then later into hybrid learning, it also accelerated the urgency around teachers' access to resources. And as Missy's pointing out, we did acquire a significant amount of content, core instructional content, primarily through one publishing partner. Really everything outside of elementary ELA, really all of their assets, and so both print and digital. And so this had to be really provided to teachers in a way that all of our systems interoperate and deliver those in a single sign-on experience. And we didn't have that experience. And so we had been working on that experience, and what, as Missy mentioned, we call that Henry Connects. But we were building a custom interface that connects to our learning object repository that pulls from our publishing partner, our assessment partner, our student information system, all around IMS Global Standards. And really, during the pandemic, it felt counterintuitive to my team and to some others on our team that I was accelerating the work along with Missy to get there, because we felt like we were propping up the entire organization, right? Sometimes Missy and I joke about feeling like Atlas, so, the whole world on our shoulders. And if we stumble, what's to happen when now we're an entirely digital organization? And but we kept our foot on the accelerator on this work, and was back on November 3rd, Election Day is a PD day for us because some of our schools are used as polling locations. We had the opportunity to introduce Henry Connects to all 3,500 teachers, and the response has been overwhelming for us. It is an appreciated interface that allows them in a single sign-on to get to their learning progressions, their unit planning guides, which had been local flat documents, now are rich digital experiences, but also built on there through these standards. They have ready access to all of the resources on that standard in a unit, and to the standards themselves in machine readable standards format. So we were very excited to be able to present that to teachers. That was all through very focused, prioritized work during the pandemic. So Missy appreciated our partnership in that and being able to deliver that for our teachers.
And I do think, Lenny, real quick, it to me is a model of how an interdependent system gets developed even in the middle of a pandemic. And the idea of, never miss the opportunity for a good crisis, right? We took advantage of that acceleration opportunity even when our teams thought we were crazy, and now they think, why, of course this is what we would do. But it to me is a great model of how, when you bring together the content folks with the instructional technology and then the actual technology team, it's amazing what you can do even in the middle of a pandemic.
Now, go ahead, Shanika.
On the sustainability, and just to toot the horns of Brian and Missy, there's also this forum that we have, is the Digital Review Board, and this was pre-pandemic. So in terms of understanding sustainability and kind of protecting and nurturing that instructional technology infrastructure, this review board ensures that we're just not out buying any and everything, that we have a strategic plan, that the dollars are to a specific purpose, that we're not investing in a software that we already have a district resource for. So just another lens for people to consider: how are you managing your broader technology infrastructure? There's obviously the budget concept, but I also think there's something to how do you ensure you have the right tools for your students?
Yeah, no doubt. And the pandemic forced everybody's hands. I think the differentiator, as I'm listening to you all, you were able to move faster and do more in the face of a crisis because of the way you operate. And Melissa, you stole my thunder. Never waste a good crisis. So, but that's never truer than what I'm listening to here, right? You guys were able to do this because of how you operate and how you move forward. So, all right, Shanika. So you just touched on it a little bit on sustainability, but let's talk about just public funding and how you're viewing some options around obtaining some sustainability using public funds.
So thankfully in Henry County, we have a local option sales tax. We have a SPLOST, if you will, it's a penny sales tax. So anyone that shops in Henry County, and that's a program that we've had for several years. And some time back, we began looking into that resource as a way to invest in some of our technology. And we're looking to continue to do things like that. So I think that is one source of our public funding that we're definitely looking into and continue to expand on how we're using it as well. Also, I think that we are looking into just finding out how we ensure that we are having a sound strategic procurement strategy. We were in a season where we kind of let every division manage its own procurement, and we're bringing that in. And with doing that, that's going to allow strategic sourcing to occur and hopefully, maximize the budget. So those are some of the strategies that we're playing with, continuing to lean in to how we utilize that educational special purpose tax, and then just looking at some of our operational practices and how we can maybe operate more efficiently so that we can maximize our spend.
Yeah, I've never understood that penny sales tax thing that Georgia gets, but it irritated the heck out of me. I want Texas to think about doing something like that. That's a great option. All right, Brian, E-rate, and we want to leverage E-rate. I know you all are leveraging E-rate, but as you think about sustainability and the infusion of technology that's come in, what kind of strategies around E-rate are you maybe thinking about tweaking? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, our E-rate strategy really is twofold. Our primary focuses are on organizational sustainability and organizational resilience, along with the assurance of our security posture. And we all know that school systems are now a target, particularly for phishing attacks and ransomware. Because folks know that we're now digital businesses and a lot's at stake. In terms of operational sustainability, when we're thinking E-rate, that's really primarily Category 2 funding and Category 2 spending. So that's out in our school buildings, our switches in our schools, in hardware out in our school buildings. And so really we're on a 5-year cycle of continuous investment. And we follow our operations division as they create through the eSPLOS program that Shanika introduced us to. They follow a 5-year pattern of groups. We call those phases in technology, but they'll have group A, B, C, D in a particular year of remodeling schools. And as they remodel those schools, we partner with them to also renovate the digital infrastructure in those school buildings through our E-rate funding. So that way we don't have all the investment all in the same year, number one. And number two, we ensure that every 5 years the school's data closets are being updated. Cisco's our partner in that work, and so really a lot of investment in on that part of it. Again, this varies with our eSPLOS strategy, and then we do really kind of a similar focus back in our data center with those, that infrastructure, those servers, and the electrical infrastructure for that. We need to know that we have a system that is sound, stable, secure, and that is resilient. And by resilient, I mean, we're prone to power outages in our area. I need to know that when the power goes out in that building, that data center stays functional, and our E-rate investment enables us to be able to do that.
Perfect, thank you. You touched on something early on, cybersecurity. And Dr. Davis, this one wasn't on our list of questions, so this is going to come at you kind of dark, but I feel like it's an important topic. Brian, as you said, cybersecurity is erupting, right? And we can spend $1 billion on cybersecurity, but all it takes is a teacher with an internet connection clicking a link. So Dr. Davis, can you talk to us about some of the things you're doing to heighten awareness around cybersecurity with your end users, your teachers, your staff, and maybe even getting out to your students?
Yeah, so how ironically, this was a body of work elevated in priority back in our winter planning as we were planning for summer into spring. And then, we felt like our role got turned upside down and our focus got a little bit distorted. But we, first of all, I have a high confidence in the monitoring efforts of our technology services team. I check in with Brian regularly on what are we monitoring, what are we seeing, what do we know, what are our weaknesses. And we are pretty candid about really that monitoring responsibility. But the second part is we are in process of launching an awareness campaign and really beginning to put in public spaces and faces the professional responsibility of every employee in our organization to be confident of the sender of their digital communication. And so we are starting to really just elevate. We've already done the informing, we've already done the PD sessions, we've already done the hey principals, this is the message to your faculty, but now we are starting to elevate that into an expectation and a professional responsibility in our organization. And here's how we will monitor that professional responsibility. And so that's really where we are. My confidence in our technology team is really at an all-time high, and our surveillance of threats is really around the clock every single day, and we check in on that.
Well, kudos, and kudos for you for jumping on the awareness side, because I'm sure your IT department is doing everything they can, but again, it still is an evergreen fight, and it's one that never goes away. So kudos for you to making that front and center. All right, John, you're going to bring us home on the questions here, buddy. So what advice do you have for school districts as it relates to E-rate and sustaining this mass infusion of devices in school districts?
Just want to commend Henry County. I have the opportunity to work with many school districts across the country, and we can talk about E-rates and the forms and the little I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed, but the most effective schools are doing what we've just been talking about, the leadership. And Lenny, you talked about the accountability, the shared vision, the interdependence, all these factors kind of coming together, and that is where it's a good school district. That's the land a good school district lives, and certainly that applies to the E-rate program. Without that vision, it doesn't matter. And without those teams sort of working together and looking at, hey, how do we use these limited resources? And as it relates, obviously, to technology, that question has just become more and more significant. And one of the other things I like about this conversation is how much of it is forward-focused, but also talking about the fact that it's building on the past. If the pandemic had happened 20 years ago, it just really would not have been an option to just sort of say, okay, we're going to do remote learning. It probably would have been sending packets home with students, but it was about that investment in the past to build towards today. And I think that as we talk about E-rate and moving into the next E-rate application cycle, it is with that same mindset. We are building towards the future. If the work that the last 5 years is what allowed schools to go remote this spring, the work we're doing today is going to enable the education that's going to be taking place 3, 4, 5 years from now. So it starts from that position of really thinking about where are we headed, what's our focus, what's the direction that we want to take our students, our teachers, and so on. And now let's look at how the E-rate program maps back to that, and how we can use all of these different various state and federal programs to help achieve that vision. So, that's the broad picture here is, everything you've just been listening to, do those things. And it's like a tree, it's the best time to plant it was 10 years ago, and it's a really good day to plant a tree today. And as we head into the E-rate funding cycle, it's very important to really think about the next 5 years. Henry County talked about their 5-year cycle in their technology planning. That lines up very nicely with the new E-rate Category 2 budget cycle, which is a 5-year renewal cadence. So now is the time, and the Category 2 budget system is just resetting for the 2021 application cycle. So today is really the day to be looking at not just next summer or next fall, but really in broad strokes, where do we want to be in 2026, 2027? And now we map that back and begin talking about, all right, well, what do we do next summer, next fall? Because we all know that we're not building towards, we're sort of not trying to claw our way back to 2019. This isn't about, hey, let's just get back to the status quo then. It's about establishing those new norms. And so many of those students that went home with devices, they're not going to want to give them up, and to me that's very exciting because the bar has been raised, the expectations have been changed, both for the students, the teachers, the parents. So as school districts, where do we want to be, and now understanding how the E-rate program can support that. Does that make sense at all?
It absolutely does. And, the E-rate has been such a critical component to core pieces of infrastructure. And as we've said on this conversation multiple times, the relevance of technology has moved from a solution to part of the instructional fabric, right? So it's not an option anymore on what we do and how we operate moving forward. So thank you. I appreciate the comments. If this is a point where we can pause and ask some questions, answer some questions, or we can continue the conversation. So, Mary, do we have any questions coming in through chat?
No, we don't have any questions. It's a very quiet group. I'm just wondering if John would like to just go a little bit deeper into what's new about this new E-rate funding cycle and how that really allows our schools to be a little bit more agile.
Absolutely. So a quick level set. We talk about Category 2 E-rate funding. That is simply referring to the on-campus networking equipment, the data cabling, wiring, switches, wireless access points, all of that stuff. So when we're talking about E-rate funding, it's the internet access, the connections that come to the school property, and then the on-campus equipment, the Category 2 funding. And the discounts that are available to school districts range from 20 to 85% based on the number of students who qualify for free and reduced price lunch. And starting again in 2021, the discounts for on-campus equipment purchases are capped over a 5-year period. And it is a significant change in the program in that those caps are now administered on a district-wide basis. So for the past 6 years, E-rate Category 2 discounts were applied or capped on a site-by-site basis. So you had to look at your 52 sites and sort of ration out the discounts, knowing that not every school site is made the same. You've got some buildings that are newer, some buildings that are older. You've got schools that serve different population of students. And that was a significant limitation for the planning and the implementation of those discounts. Now we're sort of free from that. We've been unshackled from that site-by-site limitation. And now you have one budget for your entire school district to spend over the 5-year period. And that is a huge shift in that it will allow schools to plan their purchases, I think, more effectively and to target those dollars to the school sites that need it the most. You have a brand new school versus a school building that's maybe 40 years old. It's going to take a lot more money and resources to go into that 40-year-old facility and kind of bring it up to speed with the wireless access points and so on. Beginning in this next filing year, school districts will have that flexibility. And so that is the biggest picture item really for decision makers and leaders that may be listening today, is to know that the planning now for your E-rate application obviously is more important than ever, and you also have the most amount of freedom that you've ever had to really plan those purchases out and to make sure that the resources are being assigned, allocated where they're needed the most. And when you do that well, I believe that pandemic or not, hopefully not, the school districts are going to be in a much stronger position 5 years from now than they are today.
All right, perfect. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. So in lieu of getting any questions coming in, what I'd like to do is give each of our panelists just a few minutes to give some closing thoughts to what they think the next 12 to 18 months, what are some of the biggest challenges that they think as a district they're going to be facing for their unique areas of responsibility. Dr. Davis, why don't we start with you?
Top challenges on my mind is, continuing to communicate with clarity, knowing that we still can't offer certainty because our crystal ball hasn't arrived yet, and really seeing how our seasons will evolve is still yet to be known. I think one of our big challenges is going to be accurately assessing learning gaps and really being capable of deploying the right resources to accelerate the closure of those gaps and providing access to quality education in more ways than we ever have, knowing there'll be less funds to do that. And really, I think we're going to be challenged continuously to keep the core business of student learning. It is a season where it's easy to be distracted. And the more exhausted an organization gets, the more distracted an organization can get. And so, I just think we've got to navigate our posture of, energy and commitment, and also just how we keep this entire conversation centered on youth and youth today, and our responsibility as a publicly funded entity in our community to be accessible to the youth of our public. And I just think you got to do that as a team. And so we've also got to continue to invest in the team and nurture the team and the culture of the team.
I think it's really important. One thing you just brought up is this recognition of organizational fatigue. Everybody is tired. The past 7 months have been exhausting for everyone in the school system. And just recognizing that as a leader, I think, is very important. And thinking through how you can help alleviate the fatigue and keep the energy high. Because this isn't over. It's not going to be over for a while, right? The chaos and the uncertainty. So really important. Melissa, how about you? What do you think are some of the big challenges as you look to the next 12, 18 months?
Thing that Dr. Davis said, but as a district prior to COVID, we were really on an unbelievable trajectory, and our goal is to be the fastest improving and highest achieving district in the Metro Atlanta area, and we were already pinging in lots of ways as being the fastest improving. Pleased but not satisfied is always our motto, and so I want to make sure that we are able to continue that trajectory, keep that student learning going so that we stay on that path to be the highest achieving school district in the Metro Atlanta area, and I'll add beyond, while really recognizing that fatigue and the things that distract us. So I really just want to make sure we're keeping students learning more in a Henry County classroom than anywhere else in the country.
Awesome. Great statement. Shanika, how about you?
Obviously in finance, my head is thinking about the budget. We're already looking at the FY22 budget calendar, already putting together some parameters and scenarios as, we're projecting that things will, there will be some declines in funding. And so what I, think about as scopes of work over the next 12 to 18 months is ensuring that our budget continues to reflect the board's objectives and that all the spend is aligned to one of our priorities and our strategic outcomes. I think about how we continue our journey of continuous improvement and how we make sure we're focused on operational efficiencies, about business services, and how that then translates into student learning. When we find savings through our operational practices, that means more dollars go towards the student outcomes. So that's like my focus, and that's where my energy is going to be invested over the next 12 to 18 months.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Dr. Blanton, bring us home. You've got a couple of minutes. Tell us what's on your IT horizon for the next 12, 18 months.
It's engagement, particularly student engagement over time. There is a bit of fatigue out there for all of our stakeholders, but particularly finding ways to keep students engaged in the learning process at a distance and those that are on our campuses. And some of that's technical. And in other ways, it's just, how we interact with our students, our staff, our teachers, and our community. Connectivity is a strong focus in Henry County Schools. It's one of our board's strategic priorities for us. So we really have a mandate to find ways to connect strongly with folks in our communities. And while we're all at a distance, of course, that brings its own challenges. So I think certainly engagement and connectivity is one of the challenges facing us. But I think we're well positioned to do that. And we have a strategic action team focused specifically on connectivity.
Perfect. Well, the hour has flown by, sports fans. So
Lenny,
we are at. Pardon me?
I'd like to just jump in real fast and just say, sort of as someone here on this side, I've never had more respect and admiration for the education profession. I've never been more proud to work alongside education professionals and the IT education professionals and there has been, it has been remarkable to watch. So I don't know that I can speak on behalf of everyone, but I'm sort of taking that mantle today and just want to encourage the professionals and thank them and encourage you for the work you've been doing. It's really remarkable to watch.
Perfect. Thank you, John. For the attendees, what I would recommend is don't reinvent a wheel. This wheel seems like a pretty solid wheel, and I know anyone from Henry County would be more than welcoming, more than willing to have a conversation with you. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to them. That's why they're here. That's why they spent an hour of their time to share what they've done and hopefully help you as IT people or district people, superintendents get better. So don't reinvent a wheel. Call these people. They've got the right wheel. Thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. This could go on for hours, but we're at the end. So Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap it up.
Thank you very much, Lenny, and thank you, all of you, for your insights. Our audience really appreciates it, and so do we for sure. And I would also like to thank our attendees for joining us today. For those who enjoyed our presentation, there are many more upcoming web seminars like this one that are provided by District Administration, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news, in addition to trends and current issues in K through 12. Our wide range of readers here at District Administration subscribe for free to our magazine, and they stay up to date with us through our print magazine, the digital edition of the magazine, in addition to our newsletters, which includes DA Daily, which is our daily newsletter, and DA Tech, which features the most relevant ed tech stories in K through 12, in addition to web seminars like this one. And for those of you who would like to watch this web seminar again, or maybe for those of you who believe that, the solutions that were provided in this web seminar would be particularly helpful to your colleagues, you'll be pleased to know that an archive recording of this web seminar will be available at the URL, which you can see on your screen here. And you can also expect to receive an email from our team here at DA at some point tomorrow, which will include a link to all of the slides. And so with that, on behalf of District Administration, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your school year. Take care, be well, and stay safe, everyone.